Helen, very nice to be with you again today. 7 days a week for another week or two at least. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks as well. And it's Mark Thomas, author of 99%, mathematician, business guru. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you.
Good. Are you well enough to field another question from a viewer?
Well, I hope so. Let's give it a try.
Let's put it on the screen and I'll try and summarise it. This is from Steve. And Steve says, the thing is, not even economists understand economics. Predicting human behaviour is, thank God, impossible, yet social scientists persist in pursuing the fantasy that you can. With a few exceptions, the only laws of economics that apply with any validity are that everyone wants more money and they like buying stuff. But when you start assuming people will go about getting more money in a rational way or spend their money sensibly, then all theories fall off a cliff. So there. What do you think?
Well, actually, I agree with him. I think economics is a tremendously difficult problem mathematically. In physics, there's a problem called the three-body problem. So a two-body problem, like how the way that the Earth revolves around the sun, you can solve that mathematically and you can get a neat answer in the form of a formula that describes the position of the Earth and the Sun precisely. You can't do that with three bodies. And it's known as the three-body problem. And it's extraordinary how just the addition of one extra body means that that's now too complex to have a neat
You can't predict it with three bodies? Let's check out Wikipedia. Let's see what Wikipedia
you can simulate
says.
You can simulate it, but you can't get a neat answer. Now, this is actually, in a sense, an analogy. There, look at this. So you can see the enormous complexity of the way that those three bodies are moving around. Even though the system is very simple, it's just three bodies under gravitational attraction. And you can see their center of gravity doesn't move. That's the bit that you can see just in the center there. But everything else is unpredictable.
That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary.
So if physics can't get a neat mathematical answer for the seven-body problem, what chance has economics got of getting a neat mathematical answer to the 7 billion body problem, which is essentially what economics is, because there are 7 billion of us, and as Steve's question suggests, we all take our decisions in our own ways. So I think he's right. I don't think we will ever have a nice, neat mathematical answer for how does the economy work, which doesn't mean we wouldn't be able to simulate it, just as we saw with a three-body problem.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you. Very elegant explanation there. All right, let's get back right down to brass tacks now. Governments all over the world have had extraordinary things to contend with this year, obviously COVID and all kinds of other things too. Let's just talk about the British government for a moment, and I'd like to ask you how you think it's doing.
Well, I've heard people have said to me, I think actually that Boris Johnson's doing a very good job under extremely difficult circumstances. And I don't think that's right. I think it is true that he is having extremely difficult circumstances, as indeed is every country. But if you were coming from another planet and you were looking and you were saying, well, this planet has been hit with a virus, which is fatal, and that has also had profound economic impacts, you would say, well, let's measure those impacts. Let's measure how well each government has done in containing the death toll and how well each government has done in containing the economic damage. And if you do that, you get a picture which looks something, I think we've got a chart for it, a kind of scatter chart, which shows at one end you've got...
Let me just find
not that one.
No, that one. Well, let's keep going through.
Yeah, it's coming. It's like a scatter chart.
Okay, all right. I have to. Oh, yes,
that's the one. There we are.
Yes, good.
So this one is what you might produce for yourself if you were coming from outer space, you were looking at the world and you were trying to understand which governments are looking after their populations and which governments are looking after their economies. So in the chart on the x-axis, we've got how many deaths per million. So that was late September.
Yes.
How many deaths per million in each country. And so the picture's changed, obviously. There have been more deaths in all countries since then. And what is the forecast growth rate of the economy? So what you don't want to be is in the bottom right, and where you do want to be is up at the top left.
Yes.
So
I get that.
Saying,
yeah. So where are we exactly?
Well, unfortunately, we are near the bottom right. We're maybe not the worst performer in the world, but we are one of the worst performers on both measures. Yeah. And there are about 200 countries in the world, not all of them shown on this chart, obviously. We have got some of the best scientists in the world in the UK. We've got some very good epidemiologists. We've got some very good medics of all kind. We've got some good economists. We've got all the skills that we would need to have been up there with. Why are we so much worse than New Zealand and Australia? What is it that stops us from having done the sorts of things that they did? Why have
very
we
good
let
question.
Why have we let it go?
Yeah. Oh, what's the answer?
Well, I think if you want a single answer, I think it's because the government has a number of blind spots which mean that it will consistently fail to take the right course of action. So the first and most fundamental one is probably that they believe that there's a trade-off between the economy and saving lives. Now, if you look at the chart that we just looked at, what that means is that they're aiming for a position up at the top right, where, yes, we might have quite a lot of deaths, but we're going to be the best performer economically. But that's empty. That part of the chart is empty because there are no countries which you cannot do it. You cannot have a healthy economy with an unhealthy population. But if your mindset says, no, this is a trade-off, we've got to take the right balance, you don't do what Korea and New Zealand and Australia did, which is to say, let's tackle this quickly, let's tackle it aggressively, let's shut down when we need to, and let's make sure that when we open up, we're ready to open up. And because they did that, they went in just in Ardern's words, they went in hard and early, but they also came out early. Yeah. And they have imported a few cases because people are still allowed to fly in, but they're quarantined and so on. So they've imported so few cases that they've been able to keep the total death toll to very, very low numbers. So their total death toll is less than we've had in some days. Yeah. We've had individual days with more deaths than they've had. So that's the first real blind spot. But it's not the only one.
Okay. So what I'm wondering, as far as the UK is concerned, is that it is this very strange intermixture, isn't it, between politics and public health. But certainly to begin with, I think it's pretty much an open secret that they were hoping for this thing called herd immunity. And it's only really when some scientists started to say, do you understand how many people are going to die in your foolish pursuit of herd immunity, that then there was a little bit of a check that came into the system at that point, because I guess it would have been politically unacceptable. But that raises a bigger question mark. So this chart is very interesting. It's a performance chart. If we were chief executive of Great Britain PLC, we'd be looking at this. We'd be saying to ourselves, we don't much like your performance here, guys. You're fired. To quote the words of another famous president, you're fired. But we can't do that. There's no mechanism at the moment, is there really, apart from voting every few years, to make sure they perform.
We don't have, as a population, we don't have a short-term way of sacking the entire government. We are supposed to have multiple checks and balances. So, for example, Parliament has itself several ways in which it should be able to act as a check and a balance on what the government does. Right. There's meant to be judicial review, which can act as a check on anything which is technically illegal, etc. We should have a free press, which highlights the issues and puts pressure on. Between those things, if they're all functioning properly, we can force U-turns, and we have seen that happen. We've seen that Marcus Rashford has been able to force 2 U-turns on the question of school meals, where the government is saying, well, it's not affordable to feed these starving children, and he's just correctly said that's nonsense. Of course it's affordable. And he has forced them to do a U-turn and afford it.
Yeah.
So there are multiple checks and balances. The danger that we have at the moment is that our government is desperately trying to neuter all of those checks and balances.
They are. I was going to say that everything you've mentioned has been progressively degraded over the past few years. I mean, even attacking the courts. Same thing in the States as well, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So, and I think especially in the last 12 months, there's been a very deliberate attempt to remove checks and balances. So that is a matter of very serious concern. And, there are fortunately some very public-spirited people and organizations which are tackling it. And there are still, fortunately, a lot of parliamentarians of all parties who are concerned about that and don't wish to see the end of the rule of law in the UK. The House of Lords, for example, wrote a report which was very damning and explicitly said that the rule of law is under threat, in particular because of the way in which the Internal Market Bill has been drafted.
Yes. So I'm old enough too, like you, to remember when this idea of public service was quite important. And people would go into politics because of a variety of motivations, obviously. But one of them would be that they just actually wanted to be of service to their fellow human beings. And it seems to me that that's gone completely off the agenda now. You go into politics because you want to advance yourself, because you want to get ahead, because you want to get a directorship of Facebook or whatever else it is that Nick Clegg went on to do or Mr. Blair has gone on to do. And it just seems like the ethos of public service has gone. Do you think that's true?
I think you're exaggerating. I think
me?
My guess. Yes, I think so. Hard though it is to believe, I suspect that the majority of politicians do go into politics with an objective of public service, whichever party they go into. They have different ideas. Once you become an MP, and I've gradually over the last year or so found out a bit more about what it's really like to be a backbench MP. If you don't just keep if you don't toe the party line, you've got no chance of advancement. So if you really want to change the world, you've got to get into government. You've got to be a minister, a junior minister, or ideally a cabinet minister. And you can't do that if you rebel. If you rebel on every vote. So they are forced to make a choice between complying and remaining largely impotent, or having a chance at really being able to do something, but having to compromise.
Gosh, well, that's going to knock the idealism out of your sails, isn't it?
Well, so that I think that for some of them that knocks the idealism out, not for all of them. What I think is more disturbing is that I think there are some people who have gone into politics not with the aim of public service, but with the aim actually of dismantling democracy. So part of the market fundamentalist philosophy is that mass democracy, as they call it, is an injustice. It causes, if you allow lots of people to vote, and you genuinely give lots of people power, they will vote for things like the NHS and for free education and stuff like that, which has to be funded by very wealthy people. And therefore it should be dismantled so that those very wealthy people can keep all the money. And I think there are some people who have gone into politics in recent years who share that market fundamentalist idea. That's what Philip Hammond was saying, and I think he's right. And that is a big danger. Now, I don't believe they're a majority in Parliament, but they might be a majority in this cabinet right now.
Okay. So this is all rather depressing stuff. I mean, greed is supposed to be one of the 7 deadly sins, and here we are sort of celebrating the heck out of it. So we always do like to end on a rather hopeful note. So today, what little glimmer of hope can you offer us, Mark?
Well, a little glimmer of hope is that I don't know if you've seen the tweet that Philip Hammond put out saying that the Conservative Party, he couldn't recognise it because it's been taken over by entryists unelected advisors, etc. Well, at least a couple of those unelected advisors appear to be on their way out. So that, I think, is a glimmer
we
of
can
hope.
celebrate. We're dancing in the streets today here in London.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, hopefully you've enjoyed this little series of shows. It's not over yet. We've got a few more days with you. Every day, 7 days a week. Can you believe it? Wearing my pajamas here. We will be back with you tomorrow. I've got a request. Please, if you enjoy what we're doing and think we're providing some interesting information, some thought-provoking ideas, please do share it with your friends and your colleagues and anybody else who happens to be on your social distribution list. And if you'd like to ask Mark a question, we're very keen on those. Leave one in the comments section on Facebook and he will get round to it. And we'll see you tomorrow.